It's that time of the week again for another business show. It's your business. I'm Wayne Turner, your host, and we'll be taking you through the next 26 minutes or so with this program. In studio, I do have with me our resident expert, Murray Kilgour. Welcome to the show, Murray.
Thank you.
The way the format of the show is, we are going to have a guest. We will also have a 3-minute clip, as well as Murray will give us a bit of a kickoff so that we can understand the subject. And the program is for entrepreneurs. You might have your own business, you might have been around for a long time in business, or you might just be starting out and perhaps even wanting to start a business. So we're going to try give you the necessary skills and tools to make you successful. Murray, what do we have? You are the entrepreneurial guy. What do we have this week with regards to taking entrepreneurs to the next level?
Well, Wayne, today we're going to be talking about delegation, the subject that leaders either love or hate. And I find with most of the people I work with is that they don't necessarily get delegation enough to make it a real asset in their business. So today we're going to be speaking to Ross. He's going to be giving us a little bit of insight from his business that he runs, but just a few pointers to get us started. There's a very good book called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey by a guy called Ken Blanchard, who's an incredibly well-known speaker in America, and he's written a whole 1 Minute Manager series. And he talks about the fact that if you think of a task or an action that you need to take as owning a monkey, he says that what happens is that when you have got too many monkeys in the room, you are overwhelmed with the amount of tasks that you have. And what you need to do is you need to start delegating those to other people. Because what happens is people tend to not want to do the work themselves. So they will end up bringing their monkeys to you or giving their monkeys to each other. So they say there are 3 kinds of monkeys. Downward leaping monkeys that come from the boss down, which I normally think are gorillas because they're big and they are scary because the boss said so. The other one is what we call sideways leaping monkeys, which are maybe a little bit worse because it's my mate. You know, Ross comes and says to me, Mary, oh man, I've got to work late, but I don't want to. Would you mind? So that monkey jumps sideways. And then we get what we call upward leaping monkeys, where people come to you and they say, I don't know how to do this, and how does that happen? And then you say, don't worry, I'll do it for you. So sometimes we have a menagerie of monkeys in our office trying to figure out how to delegate these things. So talking today about delegation is how do you actually make sure that you keep your monkeys for you and they keep their monkeys for them, and that the two don't swap over. And you help people to manage their responsibilities so well that they don't have to keep on coming to you. Now, the one problem we have is that we have a lot of leaders that are either control freaks, in other words, they don't want to let go of any monkeys, or others that are so laid back that they don't care where the monkeys travel and who has which monkey where. And all of that has a terrible impact on the bottom line. Because if it's at the top where you've got the control freak, you get bottlenecking. And if you have it the other way around where it's too laid back, then we have disarray, and the client can pick that up immediately in the organizational culture and communication. So we want to talk a little bit today about how do we actually do delegation right. And Ross is the right kind of person to do this, because I've been working with Ross now for a number of years, and I've actually worked with his company and know quite a lot about what he has done.
So our guest today is Ross, and he has a business. He'll tell us a little bit about the business so we can set the stage for that. We need to know where you're coming from. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Wayne.
Tell us just a little bit about your business.
I am the Chief Event Simplifier of a company called Urbantonic. And basically what we do is we take the clutter that goes into organizing an event and we simplify it. We basically help you de-stress the stressful process, I suppose, of putting an event together. We have quite a few divisions in our business. There's the Event Simplification Division. We manage everything, even subcontracting certain things out. Then we have our Event Rental Division. So you can rent anything from a banquet chair to a silver cutlery set to a lounge suite like we're sitting on today. And our other division also is our mobile bars for events. So these are brandable bars that we can put anywhere. We've put them on Signal Hill. We've taken them down to Cape Point. It's just always a fun thing to do with an event. And our final 2 divisions are event staffing division, so your waiters, your barmen, stuff like that to run your floor. And the final division is our event styling. So we'll take an event and we'll just make it look good. So whether it's the decor, bringing elements of your brand, that's what we work with.
So delegation in your industry is
Definitely.
key, right?
Definitely.
So how many people do you have working for you at the moment? In season, when you're in season?
Well, in season, I've got 30 full-time employees throughout the year, and in season we'll ramp up to probably about 50. 50 people working.
And so
at
therefore,
one time.
job descriptions, knowing where you fit in, knowing who you report to, paramount importance.
Extremely important.
Okay. So we're going to go for the good, the bad, and the ugly, but let's start at the bad and the ugly. What are some of the things you have found to be some of the pitfalls around delegation, where delegation goes bad?
Okay. I've got a saying that I use, and that let the professionals do what the professionals do. And to go behind that is, if you are going to delegate out a task, make sure you're delegate out the task to someone who actually knows how to do it. In the past, you talked about, the laid back. I've been running this business basically since I left varsity. And in the past, I have put too much trust and faith in certain individuals and delegated out rather important tasks which have gone wrong because I didn't, and I blame myself for that, I didn't actually look into or ensure that they had the skills to do what I wanted them to delegate, or what I delegated out to them, which has come back to bite me, I'll be honest.
Okay.
Cost me money.
So what lessons have you learned from having been too laid back?
Is make sure whoever you do, if I can put it in a nutshell, make sure whoever you're delegating out to has the skills to do the task. And if they don't have the skills, find someone to do it. And then sadly, if you don't have those skills in your organization, that's where the wrong side of delegation, you have to do it yourself.
Okay. And let's talk about the flip side of that, from being too laid back to, what do you say to people who are control freaks? I don't think anyone can do it as well as I can do it, therefore I'll do it.
The problem with that, Murray, is that it makes your business unscalable. You can't scale up. You can't expand. If everything has to, as you talked earlier, bottleneck or channel through you, how are you going to get anything done? You might have started as being the best, event planner or the best person to run a floor at an event, if I'm using my business. But I can't be in 7 places literally at one time. If I wanted to be in one place at one time, that's fine. I can keep my business just chugging along, growing at inflation. But if I want to scale up, I've got to have faith and I've got to delegate.
So that person actually is hitting their own ceiling of complexity.
Absolutely.
And they're just never going to get through to the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I talk about the law of the Koki pen. And the Koki pen says, if this is the box of the leader, and then there's a box of a manager underneath the leader, and maybe another box underneath there. If the leader wants to travel through the organizational structure, that they should never be able to lift their Koki pen off the page. In other words, you have to go from this box to this box to get to this box. Because I found that when people jump from here to here, they tend to make decisions here that this leader gets cut out of. Then this leader finds out later, and they get really angry. Do you think leaders should be allowed to jump through the structure, or do you think they should respect the Koki pen?
That's a tricky one. I want to go with an 80-20 kind of rule. It depends how good your leader is. You talked about those boxes, your second box. Is that leader good enough to handle it? But in general, no, you shouldn't. As I would follow, you should be following your Koki pen all the way through. But I think, and I'm sure you've discussed it on other programs, then if you're having to skip out that middle leader, you've probably got a problem with your structure, a problem with the skills that you've got. But all things assuming that leader has the skills, you need to go through that leader and delegate it through.
So I've got a small business now. I've got 2 staff and me, 3 of us. And I've got a little renovations business that I'm doing. And I've started this and I'm hiring in people. I've had a bit of staff turnover. And so I'm not quite sure that these 2 people working with me or for me are actually up to the task. And now we're going on site to do some work. And we're under a bit of time pressure. Now I'm the leader. I'm tempted now, honestly, to kind of say to the guys, look, I'm in control. I'll do all of this work because I don't know if I trust you enough. But that doesn't allow for learning. So how do you find the gap between taking control and allowing learning? And learning and failure are friends. They go together. How do you do that? Because that's a risk you take, that client is going to say to you, get off my site, or I need a discount because you didn't do that well. But however do you train these people up? How do you deal with that balance?
Well, Murray, I'd like to look at myself. I'm a long-term thinker. And, your short-term gain by diving in there and taking control of the situation is going to be your long-term pain. So it's about thinking, gosh, I need to train this chap. Sure, I might be giving up a 5% discount because I'm a little bit late. But if you don't train that chap up to do the job properly so you can delegate out to him, instead of having the 20% growth, you're going to have the inflation growth of 6% because it's just not going to grow up. So it's about, you've got to hold back sometimes, or walk beside them and say, this is okay, you did this wrong, but this is what you should be doing right. And no, you are paying your school fees. Gosh, I've paid my school fees in what I've done through my years.
Yeah.
But you're paying your school fees and using your example on that build. If you are a little bit late, so be it. But your guy has learned. So next time you won't be late and you can take on more jobs, you can take on more sites. Or,
Ross, so are you saying that delegation done improperly, incorrectly, or not done at all will actually affect your bottom line and the customer?
Yeah, definitely. But on the long term, you might be able to, as I said, dump in yourself, fix the problem, get the invoice off and get paid, but you've still got somebody down the line. One, you've been overworked, and you've been taken away from what your core skill set should be for the business. And two, long term, you haven't trained this person up, so you can't take on bigger jobs or you can't take on more jobs, and that affects your bottom line. As I said, there's that short-term gain, so you're going to complete the job and you're going to get paid on your full price, but there's that long-term pain that you're digging a hole for yourself.
So it's not just a back office, delegation is not just a back office problem, it's something that impacts the whole business.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I work with another coach that I've done some work with in Canada, and he has this comment. He says, you should delegate everything except your genius.
No,
What do you think?
I agree with that. It goes back to what I was saying, let professionals do what professionals do. Now, I know what my skill set is. I know what my genius is that you talk about. And I know what I'm also not very good at. I know I'm not very good at finite details because that clutters me. But I know I employ amazing people that can do the finite details, but they don't like the bigger picture stuff. So I agree with you.
So a leader has to have the maturity to understand that this is my limit. And we were talking before the show about the fact that I read this quote that said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So the point is that if you know that your smartness ends at a point, you've got to find other people that have got that kind of smarts around you, and you shouldn't be threatened to delegate to people that are smarter than you and are better than you. What do you think about that? Because often leaders get quite insecure that their status is being challenged.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you 100% then, that you've got to find people, as you build an organization, you've got to find people that are better than you at their certain skills. You've got to make sure they stay in that skill set and maybe don't do things that aren't part of their skill set. But you've got to find, we run 12 distribution vehicles, and as I said, we could have 50 people on the floor, and we've got millions of rands worth of event equipment under one roof. I'm not getting in the truck to drive and do the delivery. Yeah. I'm not even doing the delivery schedule because that's not my skill set.
And they're smarter than you.
And I've got some wonderful boys and girls who can do that. And they're in the zone, and they're actually what they're happy doing. They love doing that. They don't like necessarily doing what I do.
Okay. Let's turn it a little bit around the delegation process. People say to me, Murray, how long does it take to get a person from knowing what the job is to finally getting the keys to drive, as it were? I'm ready to go. And I'll often argue the point and say there is no time frame. But how do you know when someone is good to go? There must be that point. Otherwise, if you keep them in that developmental zone too long, they get highly frustrated. If you release them too early, they're just going to mess up. So there's got to be a judgment call by the leader to say, you're good to go.
Yeah. Look, I'm trying to think if I can give you a definitive answer to that, and I can't, but it's about walking beside them and slowly giving them more responsibility, going from, doing it for them to, how does it go? You watch what you do and then do, going on that line. But, Murray, I'd love to give you a more definitive answer, but it's going to be in your gut. It comes from, when I was a 25-year-old setting up this business, I didn't know when to make decisions or when to move on. I do now know. And I'll bet you I'll be so much better in 10 years' time.
I think that process you're referring to I think the 4 points are: you do it, they watch; you do it, they help; they do it, you help; they do it, you watch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think it's when you start getting to that sort of 3 and 4 phase where it's not you the focus, but they're the focus, that they are starting to kind of get that. And what I like working with people is, when I work with people, I like to actually tell them where on those 4 they actually are. So they can actually see that I'm being promoted, I'm doing well. Because I find what happens when you're delegating to someone, say you initially with them, and they're very much in your space, you're teaching them every day, and then you think to yourself, man, this guy's doing so well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see him only once a week. So in your head, you've said that to yourself. So this person who's been ready for you to see them every day, suddenly the day 2 you don't show up, day 3 you don't show up, and afterwards they think, what have I done wrong? I must be rejectable. Meanwhile, you actually intending to pay a compliment.
Yeah.
So I'm very big on communicate the steps as you transition, because often the person who's learning can actually take it as a negative rather than as a compliment.
No, that's true, as you say. But that's what, with that process, you're walking next to your team member. You know,
Yeah.
And this doesn't only apply to delegation, but everything in an entrepreneur or business owner is risk versus reward. You've got to decide when are you're going to take that risk to let them do it themselves, because you know the reward will be greater, because it's either freeing up your time, you're freeing up your other manager's time. You start to, once the reward is looking greater than the risk.
Yeah.
But that's an internal calculation you're going to do for yourself.
So what advice would you give to a person who's maybe in a small entrepreneurial business, might be just getting started, they've got a small team around them, they feel very responsible that they're not going to mess up, but they're trying to, as you say, the pain versus the gain. But what advice would you give to that kind of person trying to build this team?
Sure.
Go back a few years.
Number one, learn from your mistakes, but don't be beaten down by your mistakes. Be it how you've spent your money, be it how you've delegated badly or not. You know, I've mentioned I had another business, I lost a lot of money on it, but if I look back now, I have a far better business and I'm a far better businessman because of it. So definitely take
Yeah, that's a good point.
take the knocks, but take them in a positive way. You know, on the delegation, I'll go back to what I said. Look at that risk reward. Everything in your business is a risk versus reward, and you've got to make that internal calculation on the reward is bigger than the risk. So monitor it. Walk next to them. You know, you're going to overwork yourself in the beginning because you want to. Maybe you almost duplicate. You know, have someone do the role, and you'll start off by, you'll delegate out that role, but you know you're also doing it yourself. You're going to back up, and slowly over time you'll choose to say, this person's better at that role than I am, so I can stop doing the duplication. That's probably going to give you peace of mind, but slowly that's also, you'll learn, okay, this person is good to go, as you mentioned. You know.
Now, Jack Welch, when he was CEO of General Electric, quite controversially spoke about the fact that he divided his people up into 3 categories, and he let them know that. So he said the 20% were the people who were always the high-end performers. The 70% were the people who would just clock in and clock out but deliver a good job. And the 10% were the people that needed to be recycled out of the bottom of the business unless they caught a wake-up. Now, what happens when you've been trying to delegate to people and work with people, and you know they're in that bottom 10%, and they're just never going to get the keys and say it's time to drive?
Well, yeah, that's a tricky one, but it's about feedback. It's about feedback in your business and being fair to who you've got in your team. It's the same with that good to great, you know, get the good people on the bus and the bad people off the bus.
Yeah.
And you can only be fair and pull them aside and say, listen, you did well in this, but you need to pick up on that. And well, after 3 or 4 times, I think it's kind of obvious to whoever you're working with that it's tricky to get them off the bus.
It's a tough one because it's quite emotional sometimes as well. Yeah, I always say one of 2 things. You're at the fork in the road. You either retrain or you replace. And at a point after you've retrained, you replace. And I know there's the whole process with CCMA, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But sometimes people have to acknowledge that maybe the farm that they're working on with you is not the right farm. They need to go to another farm, and they'll be as happy as a king there. Yeah. But where they're with you, this is not the right fit. And sometimes I feel leaders get very upset because that isn't working. But sometimes you need to say goodbye. Yeah.
Look, Murray, I mean, that's what you learn over the many years. Is also you're doing yourself, whoever your employee is, and your company, you know, a disservice by not actually getting them off the bus. It's tough to do it, but you've got to actually take
and that's how you go to the next level.
Exactly. You've got to take the bold decision and stick with it. Try to help them and support them along the way as much as you can, but you've got to be bold in that.
Yeah.
Well, Ross, I'm sitting here sucking up all this information. I mean, it seems like you've really applied it into your business, and it's working well. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to have a look at a video clip of someone who has taken the principle of delegation and put it into practice in their business. They've had challenges and they've had successes. So what we want to do is just let them chat a bit and say what is the success and what is the challenge. And we'll be back right after this.
My name is Richard Linders. I'm the CEO of a group of companies called Genesis. We operate in the cleaning and manufacturing of cleaning equipment domain in South Africa. We currently employ about 350 people across 7 different branches and 3 different companies. So in the situation I found myself, delegation is very important. One of the challenges I found with delegating to people is to actually get them to do what you're asking them to do effectively in a way that I would do it myself. And that's not always an easy task. So the important thing there is obviously always to follow up with people and to surround yourself with people that are better than you, people that are equipped and skilled to actually do those jobs. So once you found the right person to do the actual task, the key in my line, or how I find it, is to how you come across to the people without trying to manipulate them, but asking them and treating them equally and speaking to them and communicating your point across to them in a respectful way, in a way that you believe that they can do that task. So if you believe in them, they will believe in themselves to actually pull it off. One of the values I found in delegating is that with so many staff and so many different branches around the country, it's impossible to be in all those places at the same time. If you don't delegate your tasks to people, you'll get so caught up in so many different things that you won't be able to steer the ship correctly. So of great importance is that you have to find the important things to focus on yourself and those which you can hand over to people that you trust. In my experience, delegation in our business is vitally important. I found that I had to force myself. I'm not a natural delegator because I started the business from small and we've grown over the years. But I do find that if I don't delegate, there is no way I can get to all the tasks at hand. So my advice to anybody who's struggling to delegate is to teach yourself and force yourself as quickly as possible to get into a situation that will free you up and free your time up to be able to keep your eyes on the horizon. Remember, as a leader of the business, you're standing on the ship, on the bridge of the ship. Most of your people are down in the engine room. In order for you to see where you're going and to navigate that vessel, you really have to rely on the people around you to get you there so that you can be freed up to see your vision and your future.
There was a great clip of delegation and how it's been actually put into practice in a business. Now, what we're going to do now is, Murray, if you can just give us a bit of a takeout, some pointers of the discussion, how someone who's watching can actually implement this in their business.
Well, first of all, I'd really recommend you get some good resources, and there's some really good books out. The one I want to recommend, which I spoke about earlier, was the one by Ken Blanchard called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. It's a very quick, easy read with profound principles on delegation. And I've done seminars on this around South Africa many times, and people always come back to me and they point and say, I remember the monkey. And these are all the responsibilities that they had to learn to delegate properly so they didn't overwhelm themselves and couldn't do their own jobs. The second thing is to start writing down the things that you need to start delegating. Be brutal. Have a look at your genius, your job description, and have a look at all the noise around that of things that are interfering, what we call complexities, and especially other people's noise that shouldn't be coming to you. And we're going to be putting on the website a worksheet that you can download. Wayne will give you the website for that just now. And on that worksheet, you'll be able to list all the things that you need to be delegating, and then the actions you need to take, and then who you need to be delegating it to. Because it's one thing to say what you don't want to have, but the other thing is who's going to take it from you. And sometimes you have to negotiate with people and say, maybe you're not used to doing this, but I'm going to have to give it over to you if I'm going to focus on sales or whatever it is that I'm going to focus on. And then the last column says by when. Because if you have a goal that doesn't have a date, you haven't got a goal. So the goal here is to say, when are you going to actually delegate it to this person? And then you need to track that that's being done. You will find that there will be an incredible amount of simplicity and freedom that will come into your life once you start applying these principles. Because the truth is, every hour you give to these other people and these other tasks is an hour that you're not giving to your own work. And you have a job description that you have to fulfill, and they have one that they have to fulfill. And when that gets messy, then all the time management goes out of the window. So my advice to you is get hold of the book and work through that worksheet. And you'll also find on the website some little video clips on how to handle delegation, and I'm sure they'll help you. Wayne?
Well, this has been a really exciting program, getting some of the ins and outs of delegation. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. As I said, you seem to have it under control. I'm sure it's not like that, or maybe 80-20.
There we go. 80-20.
Absolutely. Murray, thanks for joining us on the program again, our resident expert, Murray. The website address that he is talking about is www.murraykilgour.com. That's MURRAYKILGOUR.com. You will see it on the screen. Go to the link that says CTV. We will have a CTV link of all the programs that we've done and all the worksheets that we're providing. So everything will be under CTV. Well, that's it for this edition of It's Your Business. Thank you for joining us. I'm Wayne Turner, your host. Of course, Murray Kilgour, and he's our resident expert, and our guest for today, Ross Wilson. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next week.